It is June 25. The failed putsch of the bandit on the name Prigozhin is of course a topic that I cannot pass by. Yevgeny Prigozhin is a former prisoner, robber and murderer whom Putin met at the beginning of his political career in the 1990s. Two such similar men quickly found a common language and began to work together. Prigozhin was even Putin's personal chef for a certain time. By the way, he fed the guests of the Russian dictator, including, for example, US President George Bush Jr. And for many years, he was responsible for secret criminal schemes to enrich Putin and his inner circle. Prigozhin controlled the mining of rare earth metals in Africa, gas and oil fields in Syria, and at the same time dealt with those who wanted to compete with him in these risky businesses. To do this, he started his own private army. It was named Wagner in honor of one of its first commanders, former military man and neo-Nazi Dmitry Utkin. He was very fond of the composer Wagner, which is why he got the nickname Wagner. In Ukraine, these scumbags appeared for the first time in 2014, when Russia seized Crimea and part of Donbas. They carried out Putin's personal orders and did the dirtiest things, kidnapping people, torturing and executing unarmed opponents of the occupation. Prigozhin bandits mocked Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians, and they very quickly established control over the captured enterprises and ensured a constant flow of money from the occupied territories into the pockets of Putin and his relatives. These were Putin's private pirates, his personal army of murderers and robbers. Prigozhin was one of the closest people to Putin. He was allowed to break any laws. For example, Russian legislation supposedly prohibits private armies, but Prigozhin's army was advertised on state television and also had its own propaganda centers in Russian cities. Why did Prigozhin decide to go against his patron? The fact is that Prigozhin's independence from anyone scared the leadership of the army and special services very much. They were in open conflict for several months, and the military managed to convince Putin that the Prigozhin gang should be subordinated to the Ministry of Defense. After that, Prigozhin decided to demarche. For almost a year, he talked about the fact that the Ministry of Defense is just a bunch of effeminate weaklings who are incapable of anything. He said that these people only prevented him from fighting, that if he was entrusted with the leadership of the war, he would capture all of eastern Ukraine in a few weeks. And now he has to submit to those whom he called such dirty words, the analogues of which do not even exist in English language. The only option for him to get out of this game without losing his pig face was a coup. But he most likely was not going to seize power. He was supposed to scare Putin, blackmail him, and get some guarantees for the future. That is how it turned out. The bottom line is this: even a small army can march hundreds of miles across Russia without encountering resistance. Tales about the alleged monolithic support of Putin by his entourage are just tales. One of the people closest to him staged a real putsch. Putin's paranoia will grow manifold after all this. Power in Russia can be taken away from Putin by any warlord who is impudent and brave enough to storm Moscow. And we should continue our business because the war is still going on.